Well, looking ahead to this year, of course, it's hard to predict exactly how the year is going to go. We know it's going to be a big year of transition for the nation and internationally as well. So here to talk about both those topics and some concerns for the new year, we're happy to welcome back international relations expert Yvonne Davis.
Hi.
Glad to have you here.
Good to see you again.
Glad to have you here.
It's an exciting time.
it's not boring.
Yeah, it's not boring, we were saying.
Yeah, it's so much we want to get to, so let's get right to it.
Yes.
We're going to start with terrorism and national concerns, although lately all the terrorist attacks have been happening in Western Europe and in Turkey.
The majority, now with what happened recently with Turkey last week, we probably had about 1,200 incidents, almost 1,200 incidents, and at least 15,000 people have died due to terrorist attacks.
This is worldwide last year.
Yes, in 2016 alone, that's alarming. And of course, the bulk of that happened in Europe and in Turkey, and most of it was promulgated by ISIS, claiming responsibility. So there's not going to be any change at all with that. That's going to, as a matter of fact, as ISIS starts to lose its influence, perhaps in Iraq or Syria, and it will pull back and regroup and reemerge again. Yeah. But what the talk is now is that there will be a resurgence of Al-Qaeda affiliates coming forward. What they've done is, remember we talked about in the past on the show, sort of the Al-Qaeda corporation. They've stepped back, watch ISIS, how they did it, what mistakes they've made. Now they're coming back in. And the Al-Qaeda affiliates, Boko Haram, Al-Shabaab, and other affiliates throughout Africa, the Middle East, even in parts of Russia, are now going to come back in and start to reemerge itself. And of course, radicalization and influence in the western parts of the world, including the United States.
Okay, let's move on to the president-elect. I know you have a lot to say about his propensity to tweet.
Yes.
I mean, it allows him to talk right to the world.
Or tweeter of the free world, or tweeter, the tweeter in chief. Yeah. It's interesting that the language he uses seems to have an instant impact on the world, which has more of a hawkish response, except for the soft response with regards to Russia. But he's been hardcore what he said. But the concern in the world is, okay, China criticized President-elect Trump, said, are you just going to be tweeting your public diplomacy positions? So we're going to see if, in fact, if he's an isolationist, is he going to engage from afar through that type of communication? But there are some clear issues that are going to have to deal with. One, which would be terrorism. And of course, I know as we're segueing, talking about Russia, so he started to engage influencing public diplomacy even as soon as he was elected. Yeah, which is different. Usually there's a quiet period, but he has offered and has gotten engaged from that standpoint.
Well, I get the sense. It's not that President Obama hasn't used Twitter, but Trump is getting a more visceral reaction because the tweets at least appear to be more visceral. They haven't gone through maybe a lot of different channels.
Yes, no, he's done that, and that's going to be a style. I'm not clear how ultimately Secret Service or the security community will handle that, but right now that's what he does.
Talk to me your thoughts about Vladimir Putin.
Well, I think that we need to go to the real agenda here. Whether he's a friend or a foe, I would say that he's not trustworthy. Okay. You're having a situation here that this man wants to make Mother Russia great again, to play off the words of making America great again. Right. And if he could turn back the clock to what it was like in the Soviet Union when there was control in the Baltic regions and Ukraine and Georgia and all those regions, he would like that. You got to remember, he annexed Crimea.
Yes.
And so
which led to the first round of sanctions, right?
Yes. And he split the power of Ukraine. And even when President Bush was in office, he went after Georgia. He will not stop until he's done. The Baltic states are afraid. Some are claiming they're not, but they're afraid that this will continue. So watching his rhetoric and his talk with President-elect Trump is very concerning. And that's where the challenge is with the intelligence community to either prove over the next, or today or tomorrow, that there was really hacking of this election. But it goes deeper than that, not just with that. It's some other issues that we have to look at. And in terms of his goal, he wants those sanctions lifted because it impacted him. Russia created a $10 billion investment fund that was being impacted because of the Obama administration sanctions. They would like to see those things lifted.
We have about 30 seconds.
Okay.
Eurozone, Europe after Brexit.
Moving to the right, you have well, it looks like Angela Merkel will get reelected in 2017. Then we have a contentious election in France where there's the National Front, the far right that's running. Her name is Le Pen. She's Marine Le Pen running. Yeah. And then Brexit, the whole Brexit issue that came in, anti-immigration, anti-establishment is sweeping across Europe. So there's a real concern. The economy is still very poor and it's very slow in Europe. So that whole influence across the waters to us, back to Europe, big concern still. And of course, terrorism remains at the top. Yeah. Immigration is still an issue with Syria.
Okay, so that means we'll have you on at some point in the near future to talk about that as well. A pleasure to see you again. Happy New Year.
Thank you. Happy New Year.